Okay. So, chapter 2, contents of the Gita summarized. Let us do obeisance to, pray obeisance to Sri Radha Govinda. Om Agnanatimmirandasya Nanakashalakaya Chakshumritam Ena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha Sri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Sthapitam Ena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vandeham Shri Guru Shri Yuta Kamalam Shri Guru Vaishnavscha Shri Rupam Sagarajatam Sahagana Raghunatham Vittam Tam Sajivam साद्वैतं सावधूतं परिजनसहितं कृष्ण चैतन्य देवं श्री राधा कृष्ण पादान् सहगना ललिता श्री विशाखन वित्तंश्च हे कृष्ण करुणा सिंधो दीनो बंधो जगत्पते गोपेश गोपिका कांता राधा कांता नमोस्तुते तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुवेव च पतितां नां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णव्यो नमो नमः नमो विष्णुपादाय कृष्णप्रस्थाय भूतले श्रीमती भक्ति वेदांत स्वामिति नामिने नमस्ते सारस्वती देवे गौरवाणी प्रचारिणे निर्विशेष शून्यवादी पाश्चात्यदेशतारिणे जयो श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभो नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्ण 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 हरे 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 राम 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 हरे. Okay, so what were we discussing yesterday? So these are the 5 sections. I have completed the 4 sections about Krishna clearing the doubts by Arjuna. Okay, for his all the 5 reasons. And then finally, when Krishna talked about Nishkama Karma Yoga without any reaction, then Arjuna had another question. You wanted to know about Sthita Prajna, how he becomes fixed in Krishna consciousness, what are the symptoms, and how does he speak? That means how does he react to anyone who is insulting him or is in any distress or anything? How is his reaction? And how does he sit? How does he sit means how does he restrain his senses? How does he? Then how does he walk? So we completed the first 3. So let us see. Nothing. So what were the symptoms? Sthita Dhira Muni. How does Krishna explain that? Is the one who gives up all varieties of desires for sense gratification. The desires for sense gratification he gives up, and that is why mental, which arise from mental concoction. And he is detached from both happiness and misery. That is, he is samatva. That is, he is equipoised. He doesn't become too, when misery comes, he doesn't get suffering. He accepts it as a mercy of the Lord. And also he doesn't become too elated when there is happiness. He thinks he doesn't deserve it, but because of the mercy of the Lord, he has got this happiness and he can serve him better. That's how he considers the happiness or in the misery stage. Then he is fully satisfied by fixing his consciousness on the self. So all that it's a desire for sense gratification. How do you think? So here Krishna was describing more about this. We are going to hear more about that also. And Prabhupada says in the report that artificially you cannot restrain the senses. Why? What does it do? What does desires for sense gratification does? It puts us to, leads to Maya and we are bondage. But yes, we are bound to this death and birth and death cycle of thing here in the material world. That's what it does, because the more and more you desire, this is what it leads to. We are in this illusion. We are bondage to this earth. Okay. And moreover, we cannot satisfy our senses completely, because one thing desire will come, there will be another desires, and desires are always keep coming, and we are pulled by, our senses are pulled by the sense objects in various directions. So more and more we get satisfied this for sense gratifications, our bondage keeps increasing. We are get more and more embodied into this material identification that we are in this body. So we keep pampering our body and we are in this material platform. Okay. So this is the desirable thing. How do we restrain it? That we saw yesterday, where Krishna says he has to restrain him like the tortoise. How tortoise puts his limbs inside the shell, and whenever he sees a danger, same way, whenever that sense object pulls him away from gives him suffering, he needs to restrain his senses. That's what we saw there. But actually, it is, we not deny that you should not have desire for sense gratification, because you cannot remain like the tortoise inside the shell. You have to come out. The tortoise has to come out. It has to survive. It has to eat. Same way, we have to use our senses. You can't just, it may be temporarily, but you can't restrain like that for the whole life, right? So we need to think. So instead of how do you engage the senses? Because the mind is always active. It needs some engagement. It needs that. So how do we do that? So here Krishna says, you change the sense object. That means that instead of looking at the satisfaction for yourself, you do all the activities for the satisfaction of the Lord. That means the sense object, that is the direction, it changes to the Krishna. How do we do that is going to see now. Okay. So this is what the man of steady intelligence, he restrains his senses, he keeps them under full control. By how? By constantly engaging all the senses in the service of Krishna. That's how Ambarish Maharaj did. And by doing that, you are fixing your consciousness on Krishna, right? And when you do that, the Paramatma who is inside you, he will burn up all the impurities in their heart. And he will be, and you will get the mercy of the Lord. So this is how you can keep your senses engaged. And what to do? How do we do this? You have to be alert, isn't it? And that can be done one by sadhana. And here we can see how Prabhupada used all his 24 hours, hardly slept for 2 hours in a day. He used to spend every time on things the whole day, either in writing, translating in books, or he will be in preaching, or he was in thing, and he involved everything in the Krishna consciousness. He used to cook for himself, and his diet didn't change, his way of living didn't change, but he was under full control. So this is, we can see from the life of Prabhupada, right? And then Krishna now explains. Now you see, we say it leads to Maya. So it leads to our sense fall down, right? We see that. Now he explains the process of this in verses 62 and 63. What does he say? Dhyato vishayan pumsa sangas tesu pajayate sangat sanjayate kamaha kamat krodha vijayate. While contemplating the objects of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger arises. So I think, so this is how it happens. What does he say? Krishna says, while contemplating the objects, what do? We are thinking about it. It's okay, if you just see that object and you pass off, it doesn't matter. But if your mind keeps thinking about the object all the time, then slowly you start like it leaves an impression in the mind, isn't it? Then you'll get, but some get easily attached. Some will be thinking, and then later get attached to it. So this contemplation is the reason for the fall. That dhyato, right? And then what happens? You get the attachment. And it leads to attachment. Since you're thinking about it, you start liking it and you want to have it. That want get attached. And when you see, oh, it's affordable to me, let me buy it. And then you start, then you want it. When you like it, then you think. And many times we experience such thinking, and because that's what is there. We are in this world and there's so many temptations around us, which will always attract us. So, and okay, sometimes you'll be surfing on the internet and suddenly you see an object and you like to have it and you start buying. So you add to your shopping list. So this liking or attachment leads to want to have it, and that is lust. From the attachment, you get the lust that develops. And then what happens? This liking and desire will finally lead to anger. How it leads to anger? Like whether you have it or you don't get it, both process leads to anger. See, if you don't get it, then naturally you feel frustration because you're disappointed, you didn't get it. So naturally you will be angry with yourself. You'll have that feeling of anger in you. But even when you're trying to get it, sometimes when you're trying to get, there'll be fear also for not having, because your past experience where that many times you have tried, but you didn't get it. So there is always a fear that you didn't get it, no, that time. And also that fear is there in the process when you're trying to achieve it. But so even the process also will, I think, lead to get anger. So whether you get it or not get it, and after you get it, what happens? Even that fear of losing it also will be there. So that also too much of attachment and too much of uh, attaching to that, the lust, and then anger arises. And what does the anger do to you? That Krishna says in the verse 62, Krodhat bhavatta samoha, samho smriti vibramaha, smriti bramsat buddhi naso, buddhi nasat pranashe. What does it mean? From anger, complete delusion arises. And from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. And when intelligence is lost, one falls down into the material. So what does anger do? When you so much anger, then delusion arises, means that, you would have had intelligence in you, that you know that this is right, this is wrong. In fact, you would have advised your friend also, no, see, don't do this. This is not the right way of doing it. And there is a voice, there is some intelligence in all of us which tells us what is right, what is wrong, and it will be guiding us and all that. But once you fall into this anger mode, when you're angry very much, that time you fail to use this intelligence because you're not able to recall it. The memory gets bewildered. That's what happens. When you are fully angry and you think, then delusion, bewilderment of memory. That means it is there in you, but at that moment, at that time in your angry mood, I mean, there too much anger is in you, that time you lose this, you're not able to have this intelligence, this spirituals. Thus, what is to be done and what is not to be done, that kind of intelligence you will not be able to recall. So when you're not able to recall, what happens when intelligence is lost, you fall down to the material. So this is what it does with all your thing. That is from contemplating stage, that is a thinking of the object, and then attachment, that's a, is a thinking, feeling, and wanting it, feeling and willing. This is what the mind does. So by contemplating, you get attached to it, and then the lust, the desire develops into lust. And from when, if lust is unfulfilled, anger arises, and that leads to complete delusion, memory bewilderment, intelligence loss, and falls down to material. So this way you are all the time in this illusion. So this is how the process of fall down, sensuality. And we had showed this also, no? Same thing in this. We are okay. Memory is lost. And so what does it do? So how do you come out of it? That's what now Krishna tells about answers D. So till now we saw the answer for the last question was how does he sit? How does he restrain his senses? We saw that. But now Krishna is going to address about the how he walks, how he comes out of that, how he can, instead of restraining what he should do, how he engages. Yeah, but a person who is free from all attachment and aversion, that means I like it, sankalpan, vikalpan, able to control his senses. How does he do it? Through regulative principles of freedom, can obtain the complete mercy of the Lord. So only by regulative principles of freedom, that regulative principles, once he's serious and he follows the regulative principles, then he will get the mercy of the Lord. So, Let us see the translation. How does he do that? You can go there. So anyone can volunteer to read this.
Hare
It's
Krishna
already-
Mataji.
Yes, go ahead, Mataji. Perfect.
It is already explained that one may externally control the senses by some artificial process, but unless the senses are engaged in the transcendental service of the Lord, there is every chance of a fall. Although the person in full Krishna consciousness may apparently be on the sensual plane, because of his being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to sensual activities. The Krishna consciousness person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendental to all attachment and detachment. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable, and if Krishna does not want, he shall not do that which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within his control because he acts only under the direction of Krishna. This consciousness is the causeless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to the sensual platform. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So here he says, unless we have this serving attitude towards the Lord, that is, I'll just do whatever the Lord says. That means your mind, you're already telling him that this is what I have to do. You're giving the directions to the mind that this is. Otherwise, you're not letting the mind to go anywhere else. So your focus and this doing it for the Lord gives you, it's a higher taste. That means you get more pleasure by doing it and you get more satisfied. And for him, nothing else is attached. So he is not attached to, is transcendental to all attachment and detachment. See, I don't like it or I like it means you're getting attached. And if you don't, I say I don't like it, you're trying to detach yourself. So both the things are not, we need to go beyond that. That's what he says. A first person should be free from attachment and aversion. And how to control his senses? Only regulative principles of freedom. Then he will get the mercy of the Lord. So once you work towards that, once you do that sadhana, then only you will be able to get the alert, ability to control this because you are surrendered. And to control by your endeavor is not possible because the senses are very powerful, right? And you need a superior forces. And who can give you that strength is only by the Lord. So that's what here Krishna says, you'll be able to get the complete mercy of the Lord. Prasadam adhigacchati. That is, Krishna, the Lord will be pleased by your endeavor and he will be able to, somewhere else. Okay. So but a person free from all attachment and detachment, aversion is able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom. Through our sadhana, then we'll be able to get the complete mercy of the Lord or the Guru. So we have to go there. Then what happens? Once he is satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. So this satisfaction comes as a mercy from the Lord because he not only, because he's fixed in the Lord. This is Krishna consciousness, isn't it? When he engages senses, he does it with regulation and religious principles. He will be only bothered to do whatever is favorable to the Lord, and he won't do anything which is unfavorable to him. He might like to do that activity, but he will still won't do it because Krishna doesn't like. That's why this is the Yukta Vairagya. Once he is situated there, then all these threefold miseries, that is the misery due to his own self, Atmatmika, or from the other living entities, or from the nature, that doesn't affect him at all because he is satisfied and he knows Krishna is under the shelter of the Lord. So this intelligence is soon well established. He comes to that understanding slowly because he is there. So, and if he doesn't do it, he says in verse 66, one who is not connected with the Supreme can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace, And how can there be any happiness without peace? Because here he knows the Lord is everything. He's the proprietor, and we are the servant of the Lord, and he's fixed with that intelligence. So he's well peaceful. But if he doesn't, then this is what happens. Because you are the material platform. That means you are only looking at your own self gratification, and that will be only happiness which you get will be only nimitta matram, only for small time, and it won't, he said, dukkali. And there won't be any happiness without peace, right? So, and here we need to engage our things as a boat on the water is swept away by a strong wind. Even one of the senses on which the mind focuses can carry away the man's intelligence. So, here you have to engage all your senses. We saw how Amrish Maharaj used to engage all his senses. Hearing, his seeing, his talking, his walking, his serving, his walking to the temple, his smelling, everything, all his senses he used for the service of the Lord. And then let us see the purport. Sorry, something else has come. Okay. Someone can read this sloka. Indriyani here. Hare Krishna. Hare Krishna. Any volunteers?
Yes,
Okay, Mataji.
Indriyanam hi chartam yanmano anuvidhiyate tadasya harti pragyam vayurnavami vambhasti.
Translation.
As a strong wind sweeps away a boat on the water, even one of the roaming senses on which the mind focuses can carry away a man's intelligence.
The purport is very short. Go ahead, Mataji.
Unless all the senses are engaged in the service of the Lord, even one of them engaged in sense gratification can deviate the devotee from the path of transcendental advancement. As mentioned in the life of Maharaj Amrish, all the senses must be engaged in Krishna consciousness, for that is the correct technique for controlling the mind. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So what does it say? He says, our senses are roaming around. There are a lot of sense objects around. In a day, thousands of sense objects will be there trying to bombarding our senses. So we need to engage all our senses in Krishna consciousness. Otherwise, even one is enough for us to pull us down. That's what here the Lord says. It's a very powerful thing, the sense of the attraction, the temptations in the thing. So we need to be very careful. We have to fix our engagement in this. But this is it's not that easy, isn't it? And it's very daunting, no? It's very difficult. So what does he say in the next verse? Where does my mouse go around? Okay. Tasmad yasya mahabhago nikritane sarvasaha indriyani indyartyabhyas tasya prajna pratishtita. Therefore, O mighty one whose senses are restrained from their objects is certainly of steady intelligence. So, what does here? We finally come to the conclusion. Therefore, you have to curb the forces of sense gratification only by means of Krishna consciousness, or engaging all the senses in the transient loving service of the Lord. Okay, because the senses are superior. So we need a superior force to restrain it, the superior force to overcome it. And that could be done only by taking the shelter of the Lord. So as enemies are curbed by superior forces, senses can similarly be curbed not by any human endeavor, only by keeping them engaged in the service of the Lord. One who has understood this, that only by Krishna consciousness is only really established in intelligence, and that one should practice this art under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master called a sadhaka. In fact, you can see in the life of Prabhupada, see, when he went to US, the first people who could meet was the hippies, right? And they were all drug addicts, and they left their homes and they were living on the streets, and they were doing all sorts of active things, sinful activities. So, and in fact, the society and the welfare people, there were a lot of welfare societies, they were given up hope of reforming them. Even the government didn't know what to do with with these people. But when Prabhupada met them, when they got into the touch with Prabhupada, and they took to this, listening to him about the Bhagavad Gita and to the scriptures and seeing him, they changed. In fact, the governments were very surprised, even the welfare act, they were very surprised to the change in these people. How did they change? How did they, who were so much into the sense gratification, how did they change? How did their consciousness change towards the Lord? So this is what happens. Once you focus your conscious towards the Lord, you think only that Lord and the Guru can help you to come out of this sense gratification. How come this desire? So this sadhaka. So then he will be suitable candidate for liberation. So we can see in life itself, it has happened, it works. So under the guidance of a bona fide spiritual master, if you can practice this art of consciousness, Krishna consciousness, then you are suitable candidate for liberation. So this is what is being told here by Prabhupada. That therefore, Almighty Arm, one whose senses are restrained from the object, is certainly of steady intelligence, because we get the mercy of the Lord, right? So, living entities, roaming senses on which the mind focus carries away its intelligence. So, if you have practiced under a bona fide master called a sadhaka, then you can easily restrain from the objects of senses and you will get the steady intelligence. So this is how you can engage your senses for Krishna consciousness. Focus on the Lord. Then it is, the senses are controlled. That's the only way, and no other way you can do it. Okay. And then now he is going to talk about what is the difference between the persons who practice Krishna consciousness and one who doesn't. So, like a day is different from the night, they're totally opposite. Same way, here he says, what is night for all beings is a time of awakening for the self-control. And the time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective stage. Okay, so here it doesn't mean that we are talking about sleeping or waking. It's all about the activities. See, the activities in which where the devotees are alive or actively engaged, and that is the day for it, because so active in it. He's so alive in that activity. But that same activity may not attract the non-devotees. For him, he just will sleep over. Like if you want to go to the temple, is the devotee who is very alert, and then he's happy to go to a temple. But if you tell that to a non-devotee, he's not. He wants to sleep. So it's just the opposite. So in this verse, what the Lord says is that if you look at the activities, it might look same, but it is totally opposite for the devotees and the non-devotees, for the introspective sage and for the anistic. So suppose if you look at an activity of dancing, so dancing before the deity, Sankirtana, it is a dancing is an activity, okay. But when it is done, or who does it in front of the deities and the thing, it will be the devotees. But non-devotees, they're not interested in that. They would rather go to a club and dance, isn't it? They dance for the mundane songs. But they won't come here and dance in front of the deity or be ecstatic. So the activity might look the same, dancing, but it is totally different for devotees and for the non-devotees. So there are two types of intelligence. One is the spiritual intelligence, which finds all material activity as distasteful. It doesn't like it. Whereas the material intelligence will find all the spiritual activity distasteful. So that's what we said, no? Like want to dance for mundane songs, the spiritual person doesn't like it. You won't even go to the clubs or casinos, he'll find it boring. But he will dance especially in the Sankirtana. So Krishna is talking about activities here, which people were very much alive and engaged themselves. How beautiful is experience to dance in front of the deity. You see then, no, when I think they have shown many videos of Prabhupada when the Ratha Yatra, how people are so ecstatic. They were, no, when it was done for the first time in US, they were just engaged in that beautiful Hare Krishna Mahamantra, Sankirtana. They danced all the day. Such dancing may not be attractive to non-devotees. So, spiritual intelligence, their Atma Pravana, they are inclined towards self-realization. That's what happens. And whereas material intelligence is inclined towards material activities for sense gratification. So that is the difference. That is the thing which has been we learn from this verse. Okay. And like, you can take another example. Like suppose you have been in a city and you have gone away for 2 years and you come back and you see the city is totally changed. There'll be some new buildings and new shops, and you see many new models of cars going on the road, and think there'll be a lot of differences. And all this advancement is there in the material sense, okay, material pursuits. But a devotee is not, that is all due to the material intelligence. There's a material advancement has taken place. But for a devotee, he'll be active in spiritual pursuits. He will see how he can progress in a spiritual path, in the thing, and what he should do after this. And that is what he'll be thinking all the time. And that will be his goal, how to go back to the Lord. And that is the way the people who are in the spiritual path, their thinking would be and their pursuits would be like that. You can take the example of, I keep quoting Prabhupada because that's one which has happened just recently for us, just 30 years back, and we all take teachings from him, from his life. He was always focused on his goal. We know that. He was always thinking about how to fulfill his mission given by spiritual master to go to the West and to preach in English speaking people. But he didn't just wait till he got the visa and then he go and do it. But during the time, by the thing, he was still tried in India, but then he couldn't. But he didn't waste his time because he was preparing for the journey. Like he started, by the time when he boarded the cargo ship, he had 300 copies of the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam. He had already translated. In fact, Srimad Bhagavatam has 18,000 slokas, right? So the first canto he translated, got it printed, got the thing, and then he had the 300 copies with him. That's all he had with him when he went on the embarked his journey to US. Okay. So this is what is planned. He was planning all his life for how to do it, and he could get that. In the same way, devotees always plan in spiritual life. What will be next and that, what I should do. In fact, associating with the devotees will help us to plan our agenda in the spiritual. This is what happens. So if you practice like this, you'll be able to be in this path. So that is the difference between what is night for beings is time of awakening for self-control, and time of awakening for all beings is night for the introspective stage. Okay, so this talks about two classes of intelligence: material activities for sense gratification and introspective stage for cultivation of self-realization, right? Activities for spiritual advance. So they are like day and night. They're totally opposite. Okay, what the spiritual activism persons does and what is on the material path. And these people are not disturbed by the demands of the senses. Okay. So let us see the next. So a person who is not, then we can go back here. Let us see this. So the introspective person is always indifferent to material happiness and distress. He goes on with his self-realization activities undisturbed by material reactions. Okay. Next verse. A person who yes, go ahead, Mataji.
A person who is not disturbed by the incessant flow of desires that enter like rivers into the ocean, which is ever been filled but is always still, can alone achieve peace, and not the man who strives to satisfy such desires. Purport.
Okay. So here, what does it mean? What does that try to say is, that is now you can't completely ignore the sense objects, isn't it? Because you are still in the nascent stage. But there is a choice for us. How do we go about practicing this Krishna consciousness is what is being told here. Generally, when we are not practicing Krishna consciousness, how do we behave? We see something, we like it, then we want to have it, then we get attracted, then we dream about it, then we'll put lot of our efforts to get it. Okay. But that after getting it, we'll be happy for some time and then it is no more happiness. But then none of them will be happy, will help us to be peaceful because there'll be something else will come. And again, we are in the same cycle. So it doesn't. But if you are practicing Krishna consciousness, you want to be a devotee, these things will come. It's not that you just because you are trying to be a devotee means that you are away from these sense objects. No, these things will come in front of your eyes, but you know that it is dangerous. Now you know that it's not going to be peaceful to you. It's not going to give peace. You're not going to be happy with it. But then what will you do? Either you try to run away, at least in the mind, or you like to keep a distance from that object. That's the first reaction we will have, isn't it? So, because we know that the object is the cause for danger. But both these attitudes will not help us to be peaceful because either getting attracted, running towards the object, or trying to run away from the object, both these attitudes would not help. So, what to do? So, that's what in this verse where Krishna is telling us. What to do is, when it comes, you let it pass, but be neutral. So, how do we understand that? So, he says, a person who's incessant flow of desires. The flow desires are there like a river. It keeps coming, and it's flowing into the ocean. So, a devotee who should be like an ocean, who's fully satisfied himself and is in peace. Whatever the desires come, he should just be samatma. He should not be disturbed. So, how do we understand this? Say, suppose someone wants to come knocking at the door, and you know that the person has come to take you to cinema or how to take you to some sense gratification purpose, some activity. So what do is, you have three choices. Either you open the door, welcome him, and then converse with him, and then go for the casino or to the temple or to the thing. Or you just shout at that person saying, just go away, don't disturb me, and try to do that. Third, you just keep quiet, and that person will keep knocking, and then finally he will get frustrated and he'll go away. So, in the first choice is like being a materialist person, and in the second choice is like you're being disturbed by that person, right? But the third choice is be neutral. You don't care. This is what they think. So when you don't care, the mind will not pull you because you're feeling indifferent. Okay, you do whatever it, I'm not going to get disturbed. So this is what the Krishna is telling us. The desires will come like a river. You just accept them. Then it will pass away. No need to be impulsive or act upon it. Stay where you are. So anybody read this? Hare Krishna, the purport.
Although the vast ocean is always filled with water, it is always, especially during the rainy season, being filled with much more water. But the ocean remains the same steady. It is not agitated nor does it cross beyond the limit of its brink. That is also true of a person fixed in Krishna consciousness. As long as one has material body, the demands of the body for sense gratification will continue. The devotee, however, is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. A Krishna conscious man is not in need of anything because the Lord fulfills all his material necessities. Therefore, he is like the ocean, always full in himself. Desires may come to him like waters of the rivers that flow into the ocean, but he is steady in his activities and he is not even slightly disturbed by desires for sense gratification. That is the proof of Krishna conscious man, one who has lost all inclinations for material sense gratification, although the desires are present, because he remains satisfied in the transcendental loving service of the Lord. He can remain steady like the ocean and therefore enjoy full peace. Others, however, who want to fulfill desires even up the limit of the liberation, want to speak of material success, never attain peace. The fruitive workers, the salvationists, and also the yogis who are after mystic power are all unhappy because of the unfulfilled desires. But the person in Krishna consciousness is happy in the service of the Lord, and he has no desires to be fulfilled. In fact, he does not even desire liberation from the so-called material bondage. The devotees of Krishna have no material desires and therefore they are in perfect peace. Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. So it doesn't mean that we won't have any battle, or we don't have to, we'll be bombarded by the desires. Okay. So we don't desire when the devotees are like ocean. He said they're full of, always full in himself, isn't it? Because he's full in himself. What is, he won't hate this sense object. He will use everything for the Lord. Suppose like the sannyasis, like Prabhupada once, he was asked by the reporter, you are a sannyasi, and but you live in a big mansion and you have cars and you have so many vehicles. He said yes, but these cars are all used for preaching. He's not using it for his own purpose. So if he use it for the Lord, for the Krishna purpose, then it has a utility. See, everything has a utility because everything belongs to the Lord. So he doesn't have that proprietorship. He doesn't do it. And you will find such challenges in life. Even Prabhupada had challenges, not only this material thing. Like, when he went abroad, people were living in, men and women used to live together. They were not getting married. But that was their culture. But he couldn't, but he accepted. He said, if you have to be in Krishna consciousness, you have to get married, but not live together, not live as a friends. So in fact, the first, he himself got a couple to marry them, and he performed the marriage, and they were the true devotees. So women, a sannyasi should keep away from women. That's what it is. But he saw them as people who could be used in Krishna services. So he accepted them. And like that, even in a Grahastha ashram, we also have many obstacles. We'll get, it's not that we won't, and we'll be living just because we are in Krishna conscious doesn't mean that we won't have obstacles in our spiritual life. We will have, but we have to be introspective, and we should try to understand and see how the battle is there for everyone. Everyone will get. So devotees is not disturbed by such desires because of his fullness. And we need not chase the sense object. But when they come to you, you neither rejoice it nor be morose about it. That's all we learn from that. And as long as there's emptiness in us, there will always be some kind of dissatisfaction. So unless that fullness will come only when you are become the devotees of the Lord, once you're surrendered. Otherwise, you will always have something missing in your heart, something you're hankering for, because our soul will always be hankering, because its original position is being with the Lord, Satchitananda, right? So that hankering will be there for all the non-devotees. Okay. So a person who has given up all desires for sense gratification, who lives free from desires, who has given up all sense of proprietorship and this divide of false ego, he alone can attain real peace. So if you do these 4 things, then you will be able to attain real peace and then happiness, peace. If you are not peaceful, you are not going to be happy. And we need to cultivate these qualities. That's what the Lord says here finally. And what does happen if you cultivate these qualities? If the Stira Dhira Muni, this is what he is attained, because his intelligence is fixed. He will not anything. So this was a question last time we asked, when Prabhupada says in one of his lecture, can we kill our desires? No, we don't have to kill our desire. Desire is the constant companion of all living things. Because we are alive, we have desires. Inanimate things have no desires. If our desires are material, we engage in sense gratification. But if we engage our senses serving Krishna, then he will free us from all material desires. This is where true happiness lies. Okay, I'll end with this. Finally, what is the thing is go back to Lord. Finally, the person, he attains this is the way of spiritual life, godly life, after attaining which a man is not bewildered. If he is situated, even at the hour of death, one can enter into the kingdom of God. So we end with this chapter that finally, this is the destination of the Sthiromani, the one who is fixed in his knowledge with the Brahmasya. Okay. And Hare Krishna, if there is anything, I stop.